Big cities and engulfing mobs sound scary. Add a sense of not belonging to that equation, and you've got a horror story ready in front of you. However, in the past year, I've moved away from hiding behind my mother's skirts at the cacophony of Kolkata to now thinking of the sounds as music to attuned ears. As I began reading translations of Bengali literature, I gained a sense of familiarity with my city that my yearly trips did not do justice to. Now, every loud street had the footprints of historical figures imprinted on them, and every corner contained the tales of maidens from a different time. The point that I'm trying to make with this is that familiarity was the key that helped me unite with my city. Unlike my parents and many others who consider the Howrah Bridge to be home, I thought of it only as a piece of metal on a dirty, sluggish river. The seduction, or the pull of home for me, came with learning that Kolkata was created out of 3 small villages. I now think of returning home with joy and a tinge of pride. Pride that such a thriving city would accept me as one of its own, and pride that I can call Kolkata my home. However, there is still a small difference that creates a gap between the Kolkata that I read about and the Kolkata that I see in real life, and it exists in its name. Today, I want to talk to you about the differences between the names Kolkata and Calcutta and the consequent importance of renaming and reclaiming. To help guide your imagination as I talk you through what these 2 words mean to me, I wanted to show you a picture that I took this past summer. So in the background you see the Metropolitan Building in Esplanade, which used to be an upmarket department store during the Raj. The architecture of this building exemplifies British grandeur. In the foreground, you have a man carrying pails of water. In Bengali, we call him a bhari. He earns his bread by carrying water from tube wells to flats. This is the dichotomy that exists in my city. Rags and riches, hoppers and princes, the past and the present. Now, I've heard people say that Kolkata is a city, but Calcutta is an emotion. And why wouldn't they? When the term Calcutta is related to sparkling lights and the nightlife of Park Street, whereas Kolkata evokes images of slums and farm animals in streets and traffic jams. However, the reason that I reject this sentiment is because for me, the term Calcutta carries its own colonial baggage. The etymology of the word Calcutta is debatable, but most arguments say that Calcutta was the English pronunciation of the word Kolkata, a name derived from one of the 3 small villages that created the city. Up until 2003, an Englishman, George Charnock, was credited with founding the city. However, when the British arrived, they established their own area in what we refer to as central Kolkata today. They created their little bubble on high grounds marked with pretty palaces and soon began referring to the city as the City of Palaces. But the black towns that were littered right outside these pretty white towns were riddled with diseases and poverty that contradicted the very nature of the title City of Palaces. However, the British solution remained to simply overlook them. Even as late as the 1930s, the clubs in the city catered exclusively to the ruling whites. Yet, this oppression of the Bengalis during the Raj is something that we easily ignore because, at the end of the day, we were the quickest to adopt our masters' mannerisms and do their bidding. As Lord Macaulay stated, English was taught to the Indians to form a class of people that were Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinion, in moral, and in intellect. In essence, that is what we became. I am an example of an anglicized Indian using English as a marker of literacy and speaking in an accent that resembles the British. This ideology of progress in education became so attractive that it blurred the line between colonialism and nationalism, with nationalists such as Bipin Chandra Pal now feeling at home in a modern, westernized Calcutta. Now, this is not to say that the British left the city in tatters. Of course they pulled it from the 3 small villages to the booming metropolis it is today. However, it is important to remember that this modernization was completely in British self-interest, and the locals were not allowed to reside in the modern areas until much later into the Raj. And although diluted, this is what Calcutta means to me. Yes, I associate the name to pretty lights and the nightlife of Park Street, but if the British only linked it to pestilence and poverty, then why should I glorify this mockery of my city and call the colonial title an emotion, when the only emotion that incites in me is anger, laced with shame? And this brings me to the second part of my speech, the name Kolkata. Kolkata refers to the city as it is today, and although it may not have the tangible grandeur it had during the Raj, after all, exploiting the city did leave us with fewer resources to make do of, Kolkata's soul is yet to be tarnished. To me, the word Kolkata signifies a rebirth and a reclamation of the past. While the British were busy creating their own city of palaces, Kolkata was creating its own city of joy. Kolkata back then was characterized by a number of markets or bazaars, and it bustled with trade. With this increase in population did come an increase in disease, but it also led to a hodgepodge of different cultures and traditions. This is seen even today with the number of Hindu temples, Jain temples, and mosques that are scattered throughout the city. The communal living and joviality of the population is palpable even today. Where else will you find every other person on the street willing to sit down and have a heated discussion with you about football and politics over some chai and biscuit? Now, Kipling aptly put it, only in this city can poverty and pride live side by side. The pride is perhaps tangible through my speech, but let me show you a few figures that paint the image of poverty. Shubhra Neogil stated in a Times of India article in 2012 that Kolkata's poor were poorer than the rest. The per capita income of the poor in Kolkata is only 27 rupees a day. That's 160 bezas to put things in perspective. Almost 40,000 people were reported homeless due to beautification projects for the city. The construction of the mini Big Ben, perhaps our final bow to our colonial masters, has pushed the homeless further off the brink by prioritizing beautification over relocation. Up until only 5 years ago, I had to be careful walking around in my locale because not looking down may have meant falling into one of the open sewers that line the street. Yet, as Shondeep Roy puts it, this is a city that survives and rejoices and celebrates. Today, the literacy rate of Kolkata is at 87%. The power cuts that haunted the city have dwindled, the infant mortality has fallen, and 2013 saw the below poverty line population go down by 15%. And this is why I link Kolkata to a regeneration. Slowly, but surely, Kolkata is reaching its own grandeur at its own pace. Calcutta and Kolkata represent two starkly different stories, and yet they come together to represent home for me. While I don't reject the word Calcutta, because I don't reject the city's westernized past, preferring the name Calcutta is a step towards gaining familiarity and reclaiming the city by its own dwellers. It's a small shift away from the colonial mentality that still enraptures us, and it's a shift towards regaining pride in something that we can call our own. My visits to Kolkata don't just include going to fancy malls and gazing awestruck at Victorian architecture. They also include going to the houses of the likes of Tagore and acknowledging the abject poverty of Kumartuli, the dwellings of the immensely talented craftsmen of the city. Now, my story of reclamation is not the only one that highlights the importance of reclamation. Black people today are taking back the N-word and use it as a word for endearment and solidarity within their own community. Feminists are embracing the phrase "like a girl" and are working to shed the negative connotations that come to being a girl. And in my own community, Indians are today using a language that was once imposed on them to progress rapidly. It would be absurd of me to strike away the past, but to cling on to it, that sounds like an even worse bargain. To me, the word Kolkata encapsulates its centuries of history and the potential for centuries to come. Just as naming a child brings him one step closer to gaining an identity, reclaiming the name of my city brings me one step closer to home. Thank you.